Hello? One, two, three. Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3. Claudio, Claudio, can you hear me? Just write to me. We hear you loud and clear. We cannot just see you. Okay, can you see me now? You see me now. Okay, so how shall we do it? It's a shame that I that I cannot. Can you make sure that I see the room? It's quite hard for me to talk to a room without saying it. Okay. Okay. If I don't. It's very strange. Yes, please. it. We can try. Okay. Good morning, everybody. It is the first time that I do a a remote Google Hangout lecture. I hope that you can hear me well. It's too early for me. I didn't shave. I apologize. We are going to speak about Israel, Jewishness, Jewish identity, and Judaism, how those terms are linked, how do they reflect on each other, and why it is more important to understand the meaning of the J word, i.e. Judaism, Jewishness, rather than the Z word, i.e. Zionism. Israel defined itself as the Jewish state. And because Israel defines itself as the Jewish state, the most important questions that we have to ask ourselves are: what is Judaism? Who are the Jews? And what is Jewishness? Israel decorates its airplanes with Jewish symbols, and yet once we try to touch the J word, we are encountered with a lot of problems. People try to silence us. This fact alone is very helpful because it helps us to understand the meaning of Jewish power. Jewish power is really the capacity to stop us talking about Jewish power. But how is Jewish power maintained? The first, probably the first way that comes to mind, the first thing that comes to mind is political correctness. What is political correctness? Political correctness is politics that doesn't allow political opposition. But politics that doesn't allow political opposition is basically the definition of dictatorship. And indeed, political correctness is a form of dictatorship. But political correctness is in fact a drastic form of dictatorship. While in ordinary dictatorship, we are opposed or sense a conflict with an external institution, a party, a tyrant, and so on. In the case of political correctness, it is actually us who suppress ourselves. It's a form of self-suppression. Now, this is very, very interesting because the people who suppress the discussion on Palestine, who restrict the boundaries, are not necessarily the Israeli state or the right-wing Zionist. It is actually the Jewish left. It is not Benjamin Netanyahu who tries to tell us what not to say about Israel. Benjamin Netanyahu, in fact, is a celebration of the Jewish symptom, of that unique power. When we see him in the Congress, for instance, being hailed by the entire American political elite. He is a celebration of Jewishness. The people who try to stop us from discussing the question what Jewishness is are actually the Jewish left. Organizations like Mondowise, JVP, Democracy Now, Noam Chomsky's. They are basically exercising what we call in military language controlled opposition. They are what we call controlled opposition. Okay, I was about to write it. But let's try to understand the notion of Jewishness. The first question that we want to ask ourselves is who are or what are the people who self-identify as Jews? The first group is those who identify as Jews because they believe in the Torah, the religious Jews. This group or this category is basically an innocent category. As much as the Torah and the Talmud are suffocated with very problematic verses, it is an embarrassing fact that Torah Jews, Talmudic Jews, rabbinical Jews have never been involved in any genocidal crime against any other people. In fact, it is the left Jewish school, whether within the Bund and the Bolsheviks, the Spanish Civil War, the Nakba, and so on, that have been involved in disastrous crimes against Gentiles, against Goyim, against non-Jews. The second category of those who call themselves Jews are people who are identified with their Jewish ancestry. People who say we are Jews because our fathers or mothers, so on and so on, or grandfather are Jews. Again, this is a totally innocent category. The fact that your father or mother are Jewish doesn't make you into a war criminal. The third category is the most problematic category. The third category refers to those who identify politically as Jews. Now, this clearly refers to Zionists. Zionists are in the open, identify politically as Jews. They argue that Israel is the Jewish state and they identify with it politically. But they are not alone. The Jewish anti-Zionists also identify politically as Jews. But this, it must be clear that this is not an innocent category. It's a very dangerous category. It is a fact. It is in fact implying that if you fail to be a Jew, if you are a Gentile, if you are a Goy, you are not invited to participate in this game. So, in other words, those who identify politically as Jews are involved in a racially exclusive identity political game. And it is very, very embarrassing to find out that that the case of the Jewish left Zionist is even more racist and more exclusive than the hardcore Zionist. I'll elaborate. As we know, in Israel, in the racist Israel, the third biggest party now is an Arab party, while in the board of JVP, we don't find a single Arab or a Goy or a Gentile or a Christian. So JVP, the Jewish left, the Jewish anti-Zionist groups are totally racially exclusive, while Israel happens to be slightly more open. Quite an interesting, peculiar situation. Now, in my recent work, I took the Palestinian solidarity discourse, the language that we're using in our support of Palestine, as a test case of Jewish identity politics and Jewish domination of within dissent discourses. What I did, I basically picked on every terminology and explain how it is subverted by Jewish interests. So let's start to talk about Palestine, and it will be very easy to see how Jewish identity operates and manipulates and to a certain extent subvert the Palestinian cause. While for more than a while it was clear to many of us that the Palestinian cause is at large the right of return, the right of the Palestinian people to return to their homeland, a land which they were expelled in 1948. The Palestinian right of return is very frightening for the Jews. In order to dilute the right of return, the Jews in the Palestinian Solidarity movement have introduced a lot of new terms that are there to subvert the conflict. The first notion is end of occupation. Ending the occupation sounds like a nice cause, but in practice, it is there to legitimize the Jewish state. It is there to say that Israel within 1967 borders is a kosher concept. And as we know, this is where the Palestinians were ethnically cleansed. So it's there to actually serve the Jewish cause on the expense of the Palestinians. We move into the next notion. While in the old days, we thought that the Palestinian cause was all about the right of return, now we start to talk a lot about colonialism. We blame Zionism and Israel to be the outcome of a colonial project. Complete nonsense. Colonialism is an exchange between a mother state and a settler state. But in the case of Israel, we only have a settler state. We don't have a mother state. Israel, obviously, is not colonialism. It has never been colonialism, and it will never be colonialism. Why the Jews in the left want Israel to be labeled as a colonial force? Because it presents Israel as an integral part of an historical pattern. It means that Israel is not uniquely bad. The Jewish state is not uniquely bad. It is just as bad as Britain, France, Italy, but 100 years later. This is not the case. The Zionist project is very unique, very particular. They basically came to a land after 2,000 years, and they told the indigenous people, the Palestinian, you have to move. We have been there before. This is not colonialism. This is a unique Jewish nationalist project. When some scholars realize that I criticize the colonial project or the colonial paradigm, and they didn't have an argument, obviously, they invented a new lie, the Jews in the movement. And I'm talking about Ilan Pape and Miko Peled and Max Blumenthal, Jeff Alper. They started to talk about settler colonialism. It's a lie. Israel is not a settler colonialism. Settler colonialism is when superpower A mobilize ethnic group B to dwell in land C on the expansion on the expense of indigenous people D. So this is, for instance, the case of Britain moving Scots to live in Ireland on the expense of the indigenous population. But the case of Zionism is completely different. It is ethnic minority B, the Jews, mobilizing Britain to facilitate the settlement in land C, Palestine, on the expense of the Palestinians D. So while settler colonialism is A, B, C, D, the case of Zionism is B, A, C, D. Again, why do they come up with such a clumsy terminology? I'm not talking about people who are educated. I'm talking about Ilan Pape, who is the head of the Palestinian Studies in department in Exeter University. You would expect an historian to be slightly more reliable. Why do they come up with it? Because it is convenient to the Jews. It is done just to make sure that people believe that Israel and Jewish identity is part of a general humanist pattern. The same people, the same Jewish intellectuals or pseudo-intellectuals also tell us that Israel is apartheid. Israel is not apartheid. Israel is far worse than apartheid. Apartheid is a racist system of exploitation. But Israel doesn't want to exploit the Palestinians. It wants them gone. Israel is a Jewish, racist, nationalist, ethnic cleanser. In practice, Israel is involved in an Hitlerian system of racist expansionism driven by the philosophy of Lebensraum. And it's quite obvious that the Jews in the movement, including the intellectuals, don't want us to equate Israel with Hitler. So they speak about apartheid. Again, they try to plant this Israel Zionist project to convey the image that it's part of a recognized historical pattern, but it's not. And I can go on and on trying to explain what is going on here, but I believe that I've now managed to define the general pattern of Jewish identity politics in the West, and you are going to be the first people on this planet to see it. It is quite interesting. I try to think how to do it. I'm going to you tell me if you can see. If you can see, I'm holding this paper in front of me. Once, can you see this pen, or should I use? It's not good. Let me see if I have something. Give me a second. I'll try to find a bigger pen. Okay, I know how to do it. I'm going to be creative. Okay, this is how it works. Once the Jews identify that people around them recognize the Jewish problem. For instance, Palestine. This is Palestine. Palestine can be a Jewish problem. A lot of people becoming angry with the Jews because of Palestine. Banking can be a Jewish problem. A lot of people start to get angry with the Jews because of the banking, because of Hollywood, because of AIPAC. AIPAC is the American Jewish lobby. Because of the war in Iraq. Once the Jews feel that a lot of people around start to see a problem with the politics, with the conduct, with themselves as a tribe, they invent a satellite opposition. What will be the satellite opposition? The satellite opposition will be here. Can you see? It's the pen. Yeah? This is, for instance, the Jewish pro-Palestinian movement. So if this is Palestine is the Jewish problem, we will have a Jewish dissent, Jewish anti-Zionist group, which is very few people, it's marginal. Once this happens, instead of environment pushing on Palestine, what we see is the opposition to Jewishness, forming a larger circle, larger arena, and we start to view Palestine as an internal Jewish debate. Instead of talking about the right of return of Palestinians, we start to have two Jews fighting between themselves. basically Israel and Zionism, and 12 Jews who oppose it. And this is a general pattern. In America, once the Jews started to see that Israel is a problem, that AIPAC, that the lobby was a problem, AIPAC is the Jewish lobby in America, they formed a small opposition to AIPAC called J Street. From that moment on, the Goyim, the Gentiles, are moving out and starting to watch an internal Jewish debate. Now, this is very convenient for the Christian society, because instead of fighting the Jews, they just form a general opposition, and they actually drift away from the debate. This was complicated. Can I continue? I hope that this was clear. It is something that it's a new form, it's a new formula that I'm working on, but it really explains, I believe, Jewish history, but it also explains Jewish why Jewish history is a chain of holocausts, of disasters. When it comes to Jewish history and the perception of Jewish history from general perspectives, we can see that the Gentiles always happen to gather that what they may have believed to be a general issue or general concerns at a certain stage, they realized that it was basically an internal Jewish debate. So, for instance, the Cold War, you know, the Cold War that threatened the entire West and could have even lead to the destruction of this planet. At a certain stage, we gathered that it was an internal Jewish debate between the Bolshevik school of thought, that now we are allowed to say that it was largely a Jewish school of thought, and capitalism, that was another Jewish perception. The same applies to Palestine. Palestine was a dramatic disaster. Now it is basically an internal Jewish debate between the Zionists and the anti-Zionists. It's quite devastating. Claudio, I think that okay, I thought that I may have said something that turned you off. So are we on now? Okay. I'm so used to be silenced, you know, so that, wow, you know, that early in the morning. Anyway, what we see is that there is a pattern of really a race between Jewish politics and the surrounding politics, what we may call Goyim politics. And the Goyim are always trailing behind. By the time they think that are engaged in the Cold War, they have to grasp eventually that it was kind of an internal Jewish debate. By the time they start to look into Palestine, they realized that Palestine was a kind of internal Jewish debate. By the time they look into the American lobby and their in the influence in America, they then understand that it's an internal Jewish debate between AIPAC and J Street, and so on and so on and so on and so on. By the time the Goyim, the Gentiles, understand that something is fundamentally wrong and they are taken into a ride time after time, this is exactly when we have a Jewish disasters. When people say and say, you know, I'm tired of this Jewish business and I don't want it, go somewhere else. And this is why Bernard Lazare wrote a book in the beginning of the 20th century. He was a Zionist. He wrote a book about trying to explain how is it possible the Jews have been expelled from 700 cities in the last 600, 700 years. And this was written before the Holocaust. This is the story. There is an element of sophistication in Jewish tribal strategy that is dramatic, very sophisticated, and yet very dangerous for the Jews. And I think that we are dealing with a very interesting identity, very unique identity. We can see how the tribal, with its opposition inside, lead to the success of the tribal project. This is why I called it organismus in my book, The Wandering Who. Sorry, I forgot that you have to translate me. So I just finished this idea. This is why I called it organismus, because it's not the individual, it's like the fingers that help you to eat. The spine who maintain the entire body in a solid upright shape, and so on and so on and so on. It is more than just a collection of organs. It's a one organismus, and this is the Jewish tribal identity. What I'm going to do now, you translate it, and I think that I will be happy to take questions. You organize it. I make myself a quick coffee. It's early here. Okay? Okay, I'm back. I'm back. I'm ready to take questions. How are we going to do it? Are you going to write the questions to me? I try to understand. You repeat. What kind of philosophy we can follow? This is a very important question, you know. And I'm Heideggerian by nature, and the first the first question that I would ask is, what is philosophy? I regard myself, to understand more or to approach the new idea. Thank you. I regard myself as an reactionary essentialist, the complete opposite of the progressive an anarchist. And why? Because progressivism is, for me, a form of chosenness. When you call yourself progressive, you actually suggest that other people are reactionary. To call yourself progressive is actually to call yourself a chosen person. Now, I'm an essentialist because this is the meaning of philosophy. The attempt to ask for the condition of the possibilities of the thing. What is it that is conditional to beauty? This is aesthetics. What is the condition of knowing? Is epistemology. What is the condition of morality? Is ethics. And I ask, what is it that makes the Jew into a Jew? What are the conditions of the possibilities of the Jew? And in fact, I'm probably the first to elaborate on this question from a philosophical perspective. And this is what I did in The Wandering Who, and I'm continue to improve this this model. There will be 2 books coming this year elaborating on these issues in 2 different formats. And in general, I belong to a group of thinkers who are extremely critical of identity politics. Many of those critics are referring to Frankfurt School as a very dangerous school of thought. My argument is very simple. I argue that once we Oh shit! You're right. You're right. Sorry, I realized that I forgot that. Okay, I let you translate and I continue. Sorry. Can we continue? When it comes to identity politics, I argue that what it did, it cut societies into sectorials, identity groups that are usually biologically driven: gay, lesbians, black, but not only. You know, you have Jews, Muslims, and instead of thinking as one people, while the old left used to unite us to think together about education, about work, about health, now we are engaged in idiotic sectarian wars, like issues to do with gay marriage. Now, I don't have any problem with gay marriage, but it's not a national issue. National issue is to make sure that Fiat start to produce cars and we have work. This is a national issue. So this is my point. And again, Jewish politics is predominant in the transformation of society into identity-driven discourse. I can explain why they did it if you want. Because Jews and the left are threatened by the working class. Jews are afraid of the working class because it is always the working class that turn against them, whether in Russia, in Ukraine, in Germany. They have a good reason to be afraid of the working class. The left is afraid of the working class because the working class is always going with the right. And Wilhelm Reich writes about it. He said, how is it possible that we offer them a communist revolution, and instead of going with us, they're going with the Nazis? He's devastated by it. And this is when he decided, in order to deal with the conservative mass tendencies of the working class, we're going to give them sex. All right. So this is where we see a bond, ideological bond between the left and the Jewish organismus, and this is when they decide to break the working class into sectors. So by the time we have to fight globalization and the monopolies, there is nobody to fight it. And to a certain extent, this is how the Jewish left contributed to the creation of the New World Order, which is a disaster. Sorry. Okay, next. You can translate and I'll take another question. I'm waiting for a question to be translated. This is a very, very good question. I think that the dialogue between Christian and Islam is a natural dialogue because we are dealing with two universal precepts. When it comes to dialogue with Jewishness, and especially with the third category Jews, the Jews who are driven politically, who are operating politically as Jews, I'm not so sure that a dialogue is possible. We can engage in something that appears to be a dialogue, but as we can see, our exchange with the Israeli state, with his lobby, is really one-sided. We are only dealing with the needs the needs and the interest of the Jewish lobbies and Jewish politics. So, for instance, when two people speak about peace, Christian, Muslims, and so on, we are engaged with a dialogue about reconciliation, how to relaunch love and harmony between two people. When Israelis talk about peace, about shalom, they understand it completely differently. For Israelis, shalom is interpreted as security of the Jewish people. They don't talk about harmony, about love between the people. They only speak about their own interests. So yeah, we have to accept that the chosenness that is intrinsic to Jewish politics is a one-sided notion. It's tribally oriented, it's Judeocentric, and it is very different from the rest of humanity. Solution. What is this? Is it? Yeah, I'm not familiar with this word. Yeah, my God. I read next year. Your idea about solution. Sorry, let's continue. Would this be a solution? One state, two state solutions. How would you, Italian people, feel if I write to you from here now, from London, and I'll tell you, I think that what you do in Italy is wrong and the role of the Vatican is wrong, and I would like you to solve your problems with the South and the North, and maybe to let the South be more dominant. Would you accept it? Would you take it from me? There is something that I really don't understand about the Palestinian solidarity discourse. Every person on this planet thinks that he or she are entitled to tell the Palestinians and the Israelis what is right for them, what is right, what is wrong. What is it? What is it? It's we are really patronizing other people. We think that we know better, which is slightly peculiar. I've never seen Palestinians trying to advise the rest of the world how to live, but I saw a lot of pro-Palestinian supporters telling Palestinians that they should live in a one democratic secular state. What loads of nonsense. Palestine is now an Islamic society. So we have Jewish socialists telling them that they have to live in one secular state. It is none of our business. Palestine will be liberated by the Palestinians when they are ready to do it. Now, there is another question. So what is the meaning of solidarity? Solidarity, for me, means that I support the Palestinians, whatever they do. I have to show my support, or at least to explain what they did. So, for instance, if a Palestinian kid tomorrow strapped to a bomb and he blasts himself in a bus in Tel Aviv, I don't have to justify it. I don't have to justify killing, but I have to stand up and to say, look how far we pushed the Palestinian youth. Look at Israel. Look what they did. So this is the real meaning. Rather than engage in one state, two state, all those questions that are there to divert the attention from the Palestinian right to return to their land. This is the issue. This is the only thing that Israel tried to suppress. The Palestinians' right to return to their land. There are 5 to 6 million refugees in the region. These are the questions. This is what Israel is afraid of. The entire Palestinian solidarity discourse is there to dilute the right of return. This is the issue. Even the question about one state and two states. Okay, now see that there is a next question. There will be a solution. Would this solution have one? Okay, so I think that I actually addressed it.
Finished.
What's that?
Lunch.
From yesterday?
Yeah, I forgot it.
I'm waiting for a question. when you're ready, I can also sum it up into kind of 1 or 2 minutes of intense solution. Okay. There are no more questions. It's a pity you cannot hear. Wow. This is very, very interesting. And do you want me to sum it up in 2, 3 minutes? I have a question. How many people are you in the room? It's really a shame that I cannot see it. Just tell me, how many people are you? Okay. Around the full class. Wow, this is nice. Okay, I think that we I've managed to speak on various issues. It is obviously not an easy topic, and I try to summarize it in my book, The Wandering Who. It's a book that is available in Italian, and you are more than welcome to get it and so we can further the discussion. But I believe that the most important issue, and this is where I started today, is the ability to delve into this question without fear. As I mentioned before, Jewish power is the capacity to silence the discussion on Jewish power. Now, I believe that freedom of thought and freedom of expression are the essence, they are at the core of what West is all about. I believe that in this eternal debate between Athens and Jerusalem, we have to reinstate the power of Athens, reason and ethics, as opposed to law and legalism. And this is what I try to do. I try to delve into these topics from an ethical perspective. So while Chomsky, whom I regard as an imbecile, really uniquely a stupid person, or Finkelstein, who is slightly more clever, while they will talk to us all the time about international consensus and all those. No! For us, it's ethics. It's the reason. It's the ability to think, the ability to say what we believe in. This is the war of the human spirit. And this is where we have to take it. And it is us that have to mobilize this war. And I'm sure that we will succeed. I just finished a tour in America, and I could see that my audience doubled in the last few months because I say what I believe to be truthful. And there is a deep yearn for truthfulness as opposed to politically correct. Thank you so much. Thank you. Ah, you want my book in Italian? I think that it's Arante I. Nice one. It's about time. Thank you so much. Can I go now? One more thing. I much prefer to come to Italy to have a proper coffee rather than my machine one, rather than talking to you, and then take me to spaghetti after the class. Have a good day. Bye bye. Thank you.